Section 72 of The Toilers of the Sea, by Victor Hugo. This recording is in the public domain, read by John Greenman. Chapter 9. Success Snatched Away as Soon as Granted. All was not finished. No course was more plainly indicated than to reopen the narrow entrance closed by the piece of Durand's planking and at once push the boat outside of the reef. At sea every minute is urgent. There was but little wind, hardly a ripple on the ocean. The evening was very beautiful and promised a fine night. It was slack water, but the ebb tide was beginning to make itself felt. The moment was favorable for setting out. There would be the ebb tide on which to go out of the Douvres, and the flood tide with which to return to Guernsey. St. Sampson might be reached by daybreak. But an unexpected obstacle presented itself. There had been a defect in Gilliatt's foresight. The engine was free, the smokestack was not. The tide, by bringing the boat close to the wreck suspended in the air, had lessened the perils of the descent and shortened the process of rescue. But this diminution of interval had left the top of the funnel entangled in the yawning frame formed by the hull of the Durande. The smokestack was caught there as between four walls. The service rendered by the tide was complicated by this sly trick. It seemed as though the sea, constrained to obedience, had indulged in an afterthought. It is true that what the flood tide had done the ebb tide was about to undo. The smokestack, a little more than 3 fathoms in height, was buried 8 feet deep in the Durande. The water level would sink about 12 feet. The smokestack, descending with the boat on the ebbing tide, would have 4 feet to spare and could get free. But how much time would this release require? 6 hours? In 6 hours it would be nearly midnight. How attempt to get out at such an hour? What channel was to be followed among all those breakers, so labyrinthine even in daylight? And how risk oneself in the dead of a dark night in that ambush of shoals? There was nothing to be done but wait until the morrow. Those 6 hours lost would entail the loss of at least 12. He must not even think of expediting the work by opening the entrance to the reef. The barrier would be necessary at the next high tide. Gilliatt was obliged to rest. Folding his arms was the only thing which he had not yet done during his sojourn on the Douvres reef. This forced inaction irritated and made him almost vexed with himself, as though it were his fault. He said to himself, "What would Déruchette think of me if she saw me here doing nothing?" Nevertheless, this renewal of his strength was not useless, perhaps. The paunch was now at his disposal. He decided to pass the night on board. He went in search of his sheepskin on the Great Douvre, descended again, supped on a few limpets and 2 or 3 sea chestnuts, drank, being very thirsty, the last few mouthfuls of fresh water from his almost empty can, wrapped himself in his sheepskin, the wool of which made him comfortable, lay down beside the engine like a watchdog, pulled his red galley cap over his eyes, and fell asleep. He slept profoundly. A man has such slumbers after accomplishing labors of this kind. End of Chapter 9. Success snatched away as soon as granted.